we're delighted to sit down with you and hear your journey to becoming an accountant. Thanks for taking time.
Yeah, thank you, Kirsty. I'll try my best, and obviously telling you the honest truth.
But it's an interesting journey, an interesting story. Now at the helm of Ohlthaver List, but starting off in your career, you studied to become an auditor. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
Why is it that you chose to become an auditor?
In fact, it's actually quite funny how it started. I was driving past the old breweries right here with my father, and he asked me, "So Sven, what is it that you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I want to either become an engineer or a chartered accountant." And he says, if that's true, I would recommend to you go for a chartered accountant, because you can do anything. You can work for any company and so forth. So that was the decision made. I always had a passion for, on the one side, numbers, and the other side, the engineering matters. But then again, I guess where it all started is that, with a CA, you often take leadership roles. And I was always a captain of soccer teams and so forth. So there was a natural leadership in myself. And I think this is where I guess I saw a chartered accountant at the end of the day would enable me to become a leader.
Beautiful. And your dad was right, because absolutely it's a profession that you can go into anything. You can use that as a base to go anywhere.
Exactly.
And was there a difficult transition in going from becoming a chartered accountant to being the helm of the Ohlthaver List Group of companies?
Yeah, I think first of all, I think you got stages in life where you always have to go through big transformations. I think when I moved from South Africa to Luxembourg, specialized in banking, that was one change in terms of just focusing on banking. But then eventually, when I was called back, in fact, to Namibia, the transformation was actually natural. I think it wasn't that difficult, because I was in leadership roles, also in the accounting profession, and that was, to me, just some sort of transformation, but at the same time, it was a natural. I didn't actually feel the big difference. So, in other words, what must be true, I was well prepared through the profession already take such a next step.
Which is something that we hear so often in speaking to people who are accountants, is they're so well prepared for whatever that next step will be because of the process of learning.
Correct.
What was it like for you, the learning process to become an accountant and an auditor?
Yeah, I think even today still I borrow a lot on what we've learned during the articles. I think the study is like anything else. I went through Stellenbosch, Kunde, and then I went to UCT to do my PGDA, which is sort of all similar in terms of you going to university, but the biggest difference comes thereafter. When you start with the audit profession, you start to get to know, be very thorough. You have to check steps and details and tick boxes and so forth. The next step, you supervise people. You get taught to lead. Then little assignments, little sections. You're not only given the work to do, but you're given the opportunity to start reviewing, giving feedback early. In fact, in the second year already, you learn to give feedback to people. What is good and how can you improve further. And then you move on to the third year, where you lead the entire assignment. And I think what I always liked is about there's a natural in terms of the way people would manage you, so in terms of highlighting the good things and then showing the areas where you can improve. And I think that is something you take with you for all the time. So there's 3 years, even without, even if you wouldn't study, just get the opportunity for those 3 years. It's life changing for me.
Okay, so would you recommend somebody else to follow a career path in this field?
Absolutely. I don't think there's anything in this career that you would not need going forward. I mean, we start from taxes. We're talking about management accounts. We're talking about testing processes and so forth. But bigger to me also is the whole leadership that you learn in that, which is, I think, you can use at any time again. I mean, even taxes. We took tax aside and all these different things that you would get in touch with again.
Absolutely.
And again.
You're going to need later on in life.
Yeah.
Many, many times.
Yeah.
What would you say is the most important value in this profession?
I mean, first of all, a chartered accountant comes along with being a good person or a person that makes sure things are done properly. I think that side, the background to that is really very interesting because, you know, people always see you as somebody who checks you up and makes sure you do the right thing. That value alone to society is, I think, big in getting taught to do things properly with ethics and so forth. But then thereafter also, I believe, is the logic thinking. The ability to analyze things, to come up with very clear solutions in terms of dovetailing, you know, what's needed to address a certain issue. And then, yeah, as I mentioned before, at the end of the day, it's just leading people, taking people along on the journey in almost like a crash course speed upon which you can just build on all the time.
Beautiful, which are such important values to learn about life.
Yes.
All of the values that you've just shared with us a moment ago.
Yeah.
What would you say are the challenges of this career path?
The challenges, of course, is that initially there are times when it feels as boring. I mean, I think especially the first year, when you have to tick boxes and so forth. But again, it's the way you're led to see that at the end of the day, this is part of the learning process. I think there's another great example, and that it was more in university. I think one of my first courses was learning typing, which I couldn't believe that you have to go to university to go and type. And I was very upset actually about it, only to realize today that I can type as fast as any secretary, basically.
And that's a great skill.
And that's a huge enabler. You know, if you just think about that, some people still have to write it down, and then somebody has to translate it or type it and so forth. For me, it's faster, much quicker, more accurate, just to type myself something. So the challenges is to overcome, sometimes when it's slightly boring. But then again, it's, you are rewarded thereafter in terms of, what you learn in terms of supervising, managing, and so forth. And then thereafter, the challenge as well is that, when you move from the profession then into a corporate and so forth. And then of course, another challenge is theory often is not as one would like to think. We start with the SCA, always have these theories, this is the way it must be, the processes and procedures. I think only once you get more practical experience, you becoming complete, let's put it this way. So there's one side is a lot of feels like theory, although you are in the business, but again, then the other side is to actually create and develop processes and procedures from a private sector or corporate point of view.
Okay, beautiful, and really work with that theory and put it into practice.
Yeah.
What are some of the other rewards? You've spoken a little bit about the challenges. What are the highs?
I mean, apart from, quite honestly, I have to tell you, it's a well-paid job. There's no two ways about it. But again, a lot goes together with the image you have about it. It is a difficult course. I must say, to enter the first course, in my time, the Rekenkunde, I probably was one of the more average ones than others. So I remember an average of C, and the people around me back and forth all A's. And later first year I was like number one in 2 subjects out of 600 students. So the entry is never will not be a sign of how you're going to do it at the end of the day. Yeah, it's that the highlights. It's the highlights of the difference you can make. The highlights of that the world is open, the doors open for me to go to Europe, even in Luxembourg. Normally, especially our CA in Southern Africa, is I think the qualities of very high. Some people I know in the office in Europe was taking up to 5 years to move to a manager level. Like for us as Southern African CA, it took 3 years basically. Your ground education is a lot better, I believe, than many other places. So it's a very, very well a job which has got a huge reputation, which is great. You get huge respect for that, being able to do that, and so forth. And and also don't forget it takes 7 years to become a CA.
So it's a long process.
It's a long process.
Yeah.
So it takes stamina to get through it.
Which is a good thing for life, a good skill for life as well. Talk us through what it is that you're doing now as the head of Ohlthaver List and how you're using your career or your studies today.
And I think obviously it's quite clear that I will not be, I'm not involved in being an accountant anymore. But I think the biggest thing I still use and have taken along is the logic thinking. Being able to put things into pieces and parcels to bring sense to it and make people understand. So basically a very logical mind on the one side. The other side is the emotional side. I must say you, to a certain extent, learn how to lead people, also in the profession already. But obviously you build that out. You build onto what you've learned. And I mean, and of course, that was the beginning. And today we have fine-tuned your leadership to a big extent. Also, where things like start teaching emotional intelligence and all sorts. But it all started there, where you realize that there is a leadership required with logical thinking, or that all the time you need to be an example as well, which is also things like last week I was working on that tool, and I was seeing that if you really go into detail and how to improve processes, you actually have to make the experience yourself. So all those logical thinking is things that I've taken along into my today's life. But to be quite honest, I mean, if I do one thing today, and that's number one, it's just looking at leadership techniques, the different dimensions of leadership, what it means to be a breakthrough leader, what it means to work with being at ownership, purpose, interdependence, risk, and affinity. So that's just the main thing I'm doing today. But it started off with
that was your base.
The base, yeah.
Built upon.
Yeah.
Incredible. And with you as the head of Ohlthaver and this group of companies, the results have been evident. And so there's going to be a benefit in where you've started, the things that you've learned and what has been applied at the desk.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Beautiful. What would you say you've learned about life in the career path that you chose?
Yeah, I've got some. Obviously, you learn some very important basics in that process when you grow up to the place where I'm sitting today, in my position today. I think first of all, you learn that there's a bigger purpose in what you do. For example, I have a purpose of giving life to people. And our purpose is creating a future enhancing life, which means that you would never have to go back to work if you live your purpose. So since I can connect my own purpose to the company's purpose, I never have to go back to work. Basically, I'll just live my purpose. And the other side is that, I always say to people, if you're inspired by your salary, on the 24th, you're looking forward to the pay. 25th, you get paid, and 26th, you can spend.
Only 2 days of fun in the month.
Yeah, and then you have to be inspired, have to wait for a whole month to be inspired again. There is an absolute responsibility to play a bigger role, i.e., I always believe what goes around comes around. You know, whatever you send out, you will get back. Then there's also that we can play a major role, leadership role in society. By always said that, you know, if you don't take people off the street, they'll take you into the street. Very important, and that's why I believe that if you own you own the purpose, you realize that we all sit in one boat. You know, for other companies not to do well is of equal concern to me. So the better other companies can do, the better I can do. So I think these are things that I think for me it's
beautiful values for life, beautiful learning, things that we can all learn from.
I can probably talk a lot more about this one.
Would you recommend somebody else to pursue this, to look at what they could do in the sense of finding your purpose in becoming a chartered accountant?
Yeah. I sometimes honestly believe that this should be the departure point for anyone in life. Yeah. And I'm saying the full study, but aspects of the CA, chartered accountant, is crucial because you know, everybody needs to account for something. Hold on. No. Again, everybody needs to know their numbers, his or her numbers. And end of the day, we've got the best engineers, the best plumbers, whatever, but they still have to do their monthly numbers. They have to have the controls. They have to look after the taxes. They have to comply with certain acts, you know, certain regulations. So that is, to me, the base for any profession. So from that point of view, I would recommend that. Now, obviously, not everybody has the opportunity to go for the full 7 years for various reasons. But even if you would do so, and you can still become a doctor or a engineer afterwards if you wish to, or even a restaurant manager, or even any manager of a smallest business, it doesn't matter because you would know and you would have to make sure that your recipes, say in the restaurant, must make money at the end of the day. There must be margins, and you know also that you have to vary your recipes, you have to find ways of attracting people, and that there's a common sense about that. You know, you need to make your passion a sustainable passion, and to survive at the end of the day. Some people live their passion, but it's not sustainable. It doesn't make any money.
And that's very often the case, that the most wonderful business ideas fail because of not knowing that foundational importance, those key skills like knowing how to account for things and your books and your taxes and etc. and what legislation you need to comply with is so critical. So a great foundation. But
and maybe one more to add is the leadership. You know, I think what we always forget that in today's world, people are very much empowered. They have the social media, they have the access to any information they want at any time, and therefore people have matured. Now, if we don't treat people as mature persons or employees or so, we will not get what we want out of them. So, for example, if I believe I can tell people, and that's sustainable, then I think that will not last long because people will want to be creative themselves, you know, have innovative ideas, take ownership, but they will only do it if they can or if they're allowed to. So today, I think we need to move away from telling people, and rather go for inspiring people to be able to own, you know, not give answers. Many people are, you know, how must I do that? Rather answer back, I don't know, what do you think? Because most people have the answers. And, you know, telling people doesn't mean they understand, but letting people tell you, make sure that their understanding is really grounded and to be able to help the business. So there's a lot in terms of leadership that's crucial and critical that you can take along into making a business successful.
Beautiful, and such important values for life as well, and such key components that we don't always learn about in different spaces, but we need to know about to be able to advance ourselves in our lives.
Yeah.
The other thing, though, about studying to become an accountant and the process as well, is that it requires a lot of hard work and motivation. What is your advice when it comes to keeping yourself motivated and keeping yourself going that you've learned through your life and through your career?
Yeah, I was obviously lucky in terms of I got a scare in the beginning that everybody told me it is such a difficult course, number one. Number two, I didn't have an A in average, and I think it was a bit, of course, a bit lazy. I was, there's only one or two subjects I really studied for, but that warning gave me a absolute commitment and gave me a very important understanding that I better need to work very hard. And what I did do, especially the first year, I worked extremely hard. No day that I, would go out. Obviously, weekend played hard, but what I've done the first year is to work hard and then play hard. But what is more important that you build a basis, and if you start, well, I think one should focus on building your base, because the momentum to build onto a base is far easier than trying to re-establish a base which you've missed initially. Many students go to university and they play the first year like anything, and then it's difficult to pick up. So I would suggest you can still play hard, and I think there's a general learning for life. You need to work hard to play hard. And I believe it's important to do both, to continue with a sustainable way all the time of being able to work hard. You need to have the break. You need to have time out and off. So I think very important is to start off strong, establish yourself well, and then you can, if you want to, play a bit more harder, even if you want to. But I cannot say more, but to say, well, start very seriously, build a base, get some excellent marks, and so to build confidence, and then you will find that I wouldn't say you sail through, but it is much easier to get through the rest. So that's, for me,
key for life.
Yeah.
Start strong, but make sure you've got enough balance so that you rest well as well.
Yeah, so that's sustainable. Yeah, because we can't always say some students then work only or study only. Yeah. It's not sustainable. Then they will do it for half a year, 3/4 of a year, and then they burn out, and then you have a disaster. That doesn't work either.
Absolutely. It's been so insightful sitting down with you and hearing about your journey to become an accountant. Thank you so much for taking the time. Is there anything else that you would like to share as a message for people who are perhaps entering into this field?
Yeah, I think for me, one of the most important thing is that we all have to realize common sense is not necessarily common. We need to be very mindful that what we understand about life and our career is not necessarily understood by everybody else. So one can see this as a challenge, or you can see it as an opportunity to share more and provide common understanding to people that will basically make us all more successful. And so for me is bringing thinking to everything, and I'm saying actively thinking to everything. It's going to make a difference. It will help, because we are too many people that float along as opposed to standing up and take a lead, having a bit more backbone. We need people with backbone.
Yeah, absolutely, because after all, it's your life, and so by standing up and taking the lead in your life, you're advancing yourself and everyone else.
Yeah, that's
Thank
great.
you so much, Sven.
Thank you so much, Kirsty.
It's been very insightful.
Good.